Welcome to the November 28th meeting of the Halifax Water Board. We'll start with item 1A, ratification of the in-camera motions. Could I have someone make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cuddle, can you read it?
I move that the Halifax Water Board ratify the in-camera motions.
I can
The
second.
Vice Chair Jiggle Gammon has seconded. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. I have an approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. A motion to be put on the floor, please.
I can do that, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Vice Chair Jiggle Gammon.
I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the order of business and approve the additions and deletions.
And the seconder,
Second that.
Commissioner Cuddle has seconded. Any discussion? We'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Heard a couple ayes. Okay, yes, all in favor. Okay, I see some hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on Thursday, September 26, 2024. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I can move, Nancy.
Commissioner McClellan, could you read the motion?
I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the minutes of September 26, 2024 regular meeting.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Commissioner McPherson, any discussion, amendments, or corrections to the minutes? Okay, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. I did not see any business arising from the minutes. Did anyone else? Okay, item 4.1, operating results as of September 30th, 2024. We have a staff.
Good morning. Louis DeMoppern. I'm the Director of Corporate Services and the CFO.
Thank you, Louis.
Just a very quick update in terms of where we are in our financial results. We have, the report was taken to our Audit and Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago. As you may have noted in the report, there were some comparative numbers and minor corrections made to the report, so we have resubmitted it to the board as a direct report to the board. I always start with sort of the highlight is always our cash balance. So on the financial statements, we report that at the end of September, we had approximately $46 million in the bank. As of this morning, our bank balance is approximately $91 million. As the board knows, we did go to the board for approval for our debt issue, which was completed. The funds arrived in our bank account yesterday or today, so we're in a good position from a financial perspective. I will on the next page, Lorna, there was a question at our last meeting around I believe it was the non-trade payables. One of the commissioners asked a question. We said we'd come back. When we investigated it, there was an error in a number that had been double counted in the current year's non-trade payables, which has been corrected. And as you can see, the numbers are far more comparable to what they were last year. So our apologies for that, but we're bringing that information back to the board. The next item, the rest of the report talks about sort of the pluses and minuses throughout across the organization. Lorna, if you can just scroll down a little bit to the next page, please. There is a nice summary here, and that's perfect. So where we are currently, or as at the end of September, our deficit so far for the year is just over $4 million. As you know, we did have approval for our budget for 24-25 was a deficit of 18.7 million. So we are, if we divide that in two, because this is half the year, we would have been about at a $9 million deficit. So we are better off than we had anticipated. Mostly related to the increase in consumption. We can continue to see consumption increases that were higher than was budgeted, which is good news for us. Our expenditures continue to be on track to where we would have expected it. And Lorna, if you can just go, I think it's almost at the bottom of the report. There is I think it's page 8 or 9. There is just a little further, please. There is a summary of the operating deficits. And I hate to do this, Lorna, just a little further. Oh, sorry, I just missed it. We do have a summary by service in terms of where our deficits are. So I'll just tell Lorna exactly where it is. No, my apologies. Of course, you can never find it when you're looking for it.
Lorna's got it up on the screen now, Louis.
Oh, thank you so much. So where we're at in terms of water, our current deficit is at 6 million, which is a little higher than we would have expected. Wastewater, we budgeted for a deficit, not a very significant deficit. So right now we have a surplus as of the end of September of over 3 million. So ahead of where we would have been. And then stormwater, we have a deficit to date of $1 million. In this case, a little bit ahead of where we would have thought it would be. Altogether, as I mentioned earlier, we are better off than we thought we'd be overall, but there are some pluses and minuses between the three different services. And then with that, the team and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Louis. Any questions from the board members? Go ahead, Commissioner Cuddle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks, Louis, for the report. You mentioned in your comments that consumption increases have been positive for the revenue. I'm just wondering, with the restrictions on Lake Major, if we see a loss, that loss in consumption as having an impact on revenue moving into our last quarters.
We haven't looked at it specifically in terms of looking at the drop since that request went out. So, but anytime consumption decreases, it will affect our revenues. How significant it will be, I'm not sure at this point.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions on the operating results? Okay, moving on. Item 4.2, capital expenditures as of September 30th, 2024.
Happy to walk through this one as well.
Go ahead, Louis.
Lorna, if you can stay right there, that'd be great. So where we're at in terms of our total budget available. So this is the budgets that have been approved in the current year and also in prior years related to active projects. So we have active projects with total budget available of approximately $358 million. Before the beginning of this fiscal year, we had spent approximately $113 million. So far this year, we have spent over $60 million. So of those active projects, we currently have spent in the range of $173 million. As we highlight when we do these presentations. That still leaves a remaining balance of available approved capital funding of $185 million. So there's a significant amount of money that's still available for us to move our capital program forward. So far this year, related specifically to the 24-25 capital budget, we've spent about approximately 37% of that budget has been spent to date. So we're making progress. Continues to be a challenge to spend money, and Josh has continually brought some of those additional challenges to the board. And if there's any specific questions about projects and moving them forward, I'm sure Josh can help us out. So that's our quick snapshot in terms of capital expenditures.
Thank you, Louis. Commissioner McPherson?
Thank you. Just a very quick question, Louis, probably for Josh. I see on district energy, there's a sum there that's available to be spent, and nothing appears to have been spent this year. Is it anticipated that that project will be moving forward in the next 6 months, or what is the status, I guess?
Sure. Yes, that's related to the design phase of the District Energy Center, which is we've done piping work as part of the Cogswell project in conjunction with that HRM project. This funding here, I expect to see that funding to start moving, like you said, within the next 6 months, as we engage beyond the concept level design and work towards that energy center. So that's specific to that project.
Thank you.
Any other questions on capital expenditures? Just a request from me, if you could put that percentage in each report, Louis, the 37% you referenced would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Item 4.3, proposed 2025 HRWC employees pension plan budget. I have a motion to be put on the floor. Commissioner Purdy, would you like to make this motion?
I would love to. Oh, thank you. I was just wondering where it was. Okay, there we go. I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the proposed 2005 budget. Is that correct? No.
It's getting fixed right now. There you go.
Okay. I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the proposed 2025 budget for the Halifax Water Employees Pension Plan covering the period January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025 as attached to report item number 6 dated November 7th, 2024. So move.
I can second that.
Commissioner Cuddle has seconded. I believe Heather Britton is going to give us some more information. Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning.
Heather,
sorry. Go ahead, Louis.
Sorry, if I may. This comes to the board as the trustees of the pension plan. So it's one of the many hats that the board wears. So we're making sure that as trustees, you're aware of what the budget is for the pension plan. And with that, sorry, Heather, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you,
No
Louis.
problem.
That's excellent context with new members on the board. Go ahead, Heather.
No problem. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. So I will provide to you the proposed 2025 pension plan for the Halifax Regional Water Commission for 2025. So next slide, please. This slide summarizes the statement of changes in net assets available for benefits that we are budgeting for 2025. So as you can see, we are proposing or budgeting a net change of $13.9 million. That's made up of 3 main components: revenue, contributions, and expenses. So the revenue of $14 million, contributions of $8.2 million, offset by expenses of $8.3. The next several slides will show you the breakdown of and some of the assumptions that we used in putting this budget together. So the revenue budget of 14 million is made up of two main components: investment income of 3.4 million. That's actually net investment income, net of investment management fees, and increases in the fair value of investment assets of 10.6. So those two items are, very much investment items. So I say key assumptions at the bottom. There's really not assumptions that were made. We use the 2024 forecast for the investment income line, and we base the increase in the fair value of investment assets on a 5-year average, including a 2024 forecast. Again, very difficult for us to predict those revenue figures, but we do like to have some concept of what might be in and what might be going in. And certainly in 2023 and 24, the figures have been quite favorable. I wouldn't think we would typically budget that much, but we, try to use the history as a source of information for the budget going forward. So next slide, please, is on the contributions. So we are budgeting contributions of 8.2 million. So that's made up of employee contributions of 4 million, employer matching those contributions of 4 million, and additional employee voluntary contributions of 0.2 million. So some of the key assumptions that were considered in these items were we projected about 30 new hires. That might seem low, but it's net new hires because, of course, we use current state, add on the 30 new hires, add on, say, 50 or 60 new hires, and then assume that a number of people are leaving the organization for net new hires of 30. Salary and wage escalations. At the time that we were pulling the budget together, the collective agreements hadn't been ratified yet, so we used a 3% assumption, which I think is quite reasonable considering the percentages that were approved or were ratified in the agreements. Pensionable earnings at Halifax Water are capped. They've been capped since the pension plan redesign in 2016, and they were capped at the 2015 CRA level. Starting in 2024, according to the MOU in the collective agreements, those earnings increase by 1% a year. So for 2025, that is about 143,700. The contribution rate is 9.6%. That rate has been in effect for the last 3 years. It will likely change in 2025 as we will be having an actuarial valuation conducted by our actuaries. The actuarial valuation determines the financial health of the plan and also future funding requirements. And so part of the funding requirements of a plan are contribution rates. So that rate is likely to change, but there was really no way for us to know what it'll be. So we left it at the 9.6%. Just a note at the bottom there is on a kind of a sensitivity note around earnings. Every additional 1% in pensionable earnings would result in approximately $80,000 in more contributions going into the plan. And the next page is about the expenses. So the expenses of the plan are budgeted at 8.3 million for 2025. It's made up of 4 main components: benefit payments to our pensioners. So our actual pension payments are 6.1 million, termination payments of 2 million, pre-retirement death benefits, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's at 0 for 2025, and administrative expenses of 0.2 million. Some of the key considerations, the Halifax Water Pension Plan is indexed. It's indexed at CPI to a maximum of 2% for earnings, pension benefits earned up to and including 2015. And it's indexed at CPI to a maximum of 1% for pension benefits earned 2016 onward. So we are expecting that CPI will come in at least 2%. So we are expecting the 2% and 1% indexing. We're estimating about 16 new hires. When we look at that, we consider people that have committed to retire in 2025, people that are on long-term disability and have to retire from the pension plan at 65, and also people that are eligible for an unreduced pension at any time in the past or 2025, because people could have reached their rule of 85 in recent years, but maybe just have chosen not to retire yet. So anybody that has reached that unreduced age in 2025 or before, we look at those numbers and we kind of make some assumptions about how many people will actually retire. So we did assume about 16 people in 2025. That does compare with 2024, as we had about 14 retirements this year. Termination payments, always important to point out that in pension language, termination doesn't necessarily mean that somebody has been terminated, but they have left the plan either by resignation or termination. And when they leave, they can take their pension with them in some form, either to their new employer or to a locked-in retirement account with a financial institution, whatever it may be. It is money that was in our pension plan that is actually leaving the plan. So that's what that figure represents. Termination payments in recent years have increased, and certainly, so we based it on a 3-year average and added 10%. It could be that more people are leaving the plan, or people with more service are leaving the plan. So their commuted value, the value of the pension they've earned, is actually higher, and they can take that with them. So we have increased that figure a bit. We never budget for pre-retirement death benefits. And why that's important is if somebody sadly passes away before they retire, so an active employee member, the rules around their pension are different. They don't, their spouse or beneficiary doesn't necessarily get a monthly pension. It's actually almost, and I don't know all the actuarial rules around it, but there's rules around the value of the pension that they would earn that would get paid out as a lump sum payout. We've seen in recent years, sadly, that we did have a couple of active members who had passed away, and we do note that on our quarterly financial report that we provide. It is something we don't budget for, but something that's just worth understanding can be a payout at some point. So that summarizes the 3 main components of the proposed 2025 budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Heather. And I was remiss in not asking you to introduce yourself since we have new people on the commission. Could you just introduce yourself?
Certainly, yes. So my name is Heather Britton. I work in the finance department at Halifax Water, and I work predominantly on pension plan financial reporting and pension plan administration.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank
Any
you.
questions for Heather? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll call for the vote. The motion is on the floor. All those in favor of the motion say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you, Heather and Louis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
The next item is 4.4, operating budget preliminary.
So this is me. I will do a quick update in terms of where we're at on our budget process. So our goal is to get to our board with a operating and a capital budget at the board meeting in January. So we are working actively to get that to the board for that period of time. Our intent is to use the results of that budget as the basis for our rate application. So shortly thereafter, there'll be a rate application as a result of the budget. Where we're at this stage is we have gone through and looked at where we think our expenditures will end up. Certainly on the operating side, we continue to see inflation affecting expenditures across the board. So we are looking for fairly significant increases in our electricity, heating fuel, chemical, natural gas costs. So that we will be building into our budget. We also have brought to the board that our union contracts have been approved. So there were increases built into those contracts that will be incorporated in the budget. Some of the other challenges that we continue to see, the organization continues to grow. We're continuing to be challenged by the number of new positions that are being requested across the organization and how we're able to accommodate that increase in our salary and benefits cost. The other pieces that are almost an indication of our success that we've had around our capital expenditures. Whenever we bring new assets in, our depreciation costs go up, and in our case, depreciation is an expense that we need to include, which is funded in our rates. So we will continue to see that increase, and also as a result of our capital spend, we'll continue to see the amount of debt that we need to fund our capital program increase as well. So we are there are a lot of challenges that we're trying to balance. We're actively working through that as an executive team with the intent to bring a more fulsome report to our next board workshop. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have in terms of where we're at today.
Any questions for Louis, but knowing that we'll get more detailed information in the near future? No? Okay. Thank you, Louis. I think you're still up. 4.5 capital budget preliminary.
I think I'll pass that one on to Josh.
Josh, if you can
Great.
introduce yourself and go
Sure.
ahead.
Yeah, I might have missed that earlier. Josh DeYoung, I'm the Director of Engineering and Capital Infrastructure here at Halifax Water. And for an update for the capital budget planning process for fiscal 25-26, this is our first year utilizing a new software for project intake. We're using that software to receive projects from different parties in the organization with their requests. And as we work through those intakes, we end up with a candidate list of projects for looking at years 1 through 5 into the future. From there, we've had ongoing meetings with the senior management team in engineering and operations, as well as conversations with Louis' team as well on that project list. So we're going through those deliberations right now on right-sizing delivery of projects, balancing existing resources with some internal movement that we've had in and out of the department in the past year, taking into account ongoing projects that we have currently, as well as trying to look at some of the larger 1 million and higher projects that require UARB approval, looking at those with that lens of what expectations come with the schedule of submitting an application and the time frame it takes to get those approvals, and trying to marry that up with our construction season. So that's kind of where we are today with that approach, and I would second what Louis said, that more to come in the near term.
Thank you, Josh. Any questions for Josh at this time, or knowing there's more detail to come? Thank you, Josh. We look forward to seeing next year's plan. Okay, I think Josh is still going to be up. We have capital reports. We have 3 projects looking for funding. We're going to start with 5.1, Lacewood Drive transmission main looping. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I can put that on the floor.
Go ahead.
I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the Lacewood Drive transmission main extension, IMP project WO2, at a total cost of $5,817,000.
Commissioner McClellan will second. Yes.
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes.
Go ahead, Josh.
Great, thank you. I'm going to introduce Jonathan McDonald here, manager in our engineering team that is responsible for this Lacewood project here, and he's going to give a brief update on this request.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, Josh, and members of the board for allowing me to give this presentation this morning. So yeah, I'm here to talk about the Lacewood Drive transmission main extension. So Lauren, if you could just go to the next slide, please. So just a little bit of background. This the 2019 IRP strategy for POC walk transmission main resiliency had a strategy of transmission main twinning for the entire network. So that was what their recommendation was, to give us a little bit more resiliency in our water distribution network. So as part of that strategy, they recommend twinning the transmission main from POC walk, as well as doing some, I guess, critical select transmission main twinning, including the north end feeder, and some looping and transmission connections at various locations in the network. And also part of that Pockwalk transmission resiliency strategy was looking at the Geezer 158 reservoir feed and how this Lacewood Drive looping ties into that. So some of the benefits of doing this project would include allowing more water to get to the Geezer reservoirs. That'd be 158 and 123, which will give you a little bit of a picture in a minute so you can see where those are at. This project would also help provide a second feed to the lakeside high pressure zone, which is kind of off the back end of Bears Lake. That's currently supported, I guess, by a single feed outside of, or single feed from Geezer 158. And it would also help strengthen some of the Geezer supported zones, including Peninsula Halifax, because the 158 zone is the highest HGL or the highest pressure zone outside of the Pockwalk plant. So it's a strategic area for us to get water into the system where it's needed. And it also kind of ties into the IMP twinning, where they're looking at potentially in the future there'd be a second feed that would support the 158 zone on the west side of the Highway 102. And Lauren, if you want to just switch to the next slide, it kind of gives a little picture to show you. So this is just a snapshot of our distribution system with the different colors and pressure zones. So the blue is our 42-inch main feed from Pockwalk that comes up Dunbrack Street. The orange is an existing 30-inch that comes up the linear trail that feeds the 158 reservoir currently. And the one I just mentioned there, that future 102 twinned pipe that the IMP are recommending, is the purple line. And you can see at the bottom of that purple line where there's a gap in our system. That's exactly where the project area that we're looking at connecting those two pipes together. So if you just do a next slide there, Lorna, it shows it a little bit clear. Yeah, so it's the red box there. So that's essentially, we want to put a 24-inch pipe from basically the end of where it ends, like kind of around the Kent on Lacewood Drive, and over underneath the highway towards kind of like in front of the Home Depot, which is the other end of it. So that's the area of the work. It's a very busy street, as everybody knows. It's the main inlet and exit, or main intake and exit to the Bears Lake Industrial Park. And you can see at the bottom of the screen, you can see the Geezer 158 there, reservoir labeled, and as well as some of the 123. It's kind of overridden, but it's right next to the it's kind of at the edge of the light green zone. So it's a little bit difficult to see on this map, but just by connecting those two dots, or sorry, connecting those two transmission mains together, so those two pipes together, gives us a bit of looping, because right now it's just a dead end. So Lauren, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So the scope of the work includes about 500 meters of new 24-inch water main on the north side of Lacewood Drive. That would, like I said, connect the two. There's an existing 16-inch on one end and a 24-inch on the other, so that would provide a connection between those two pipes. With that, there's about a couple hundred meters of existing stormwater infrastructure that's currently in the intersection that would need to be relocated to accommodate this transmission main. Back when the interchange was constructed, I believe in the early 90s to mid 90s, they put they blasted some additional rock near the foundations of the bridge. So there is a corridor that was anticipated for this pipe in the future, and we're trying to make use of that corridor as much as we can by putting it on the north side. There's electrical reinstatement work. There's a pretty extensive traffic signal that we're going to have to work around. There's some streetscape reinstatements. There's asphalt curbs and things that we'll have to remove to put the pipe in the ground. There's a significant amount of traffic control. Like I said, this is a very busy intersection in the city, and we'll have to work through that with our Nova Scotia Department of Transportation and HRM, because they're both stakeholders in this project. And there's also going to be significant shutdowns involved for connections to these mains. There's large commercial customers on either end. There's the Home Depot on one end, and then on the other you got the Walmart, the Costco, the Kent. So there's going to be some significant interruptions, probably for at least 12 hours to make a connection on each end that has to be planned and coordinated with those customers. We did coordinate the project with HRM and Department of Public Works. They originally, in talking with them, they originally have planned to do bridge deck rehab in 24 and 25. And their original plan was to do the milling and paving on Lacewood Drive in 2025, which will be next year. But in talking with them and coordinating this work, they agreed to bump their budget to 2026 to allow us to get this project put in the ground, reinstated, and then they would come behind us in the following summer to do more milling and paving throughout that whole intersection. So if this project's approved and we're able to keep on our timeline, at least it's giving the opportunity to coordinate that work, and we're not digging it up after they've already fixed all the asphalt. So in saying that, we've have 200,000 was included in our 24-25 budget. That was mostly for design and concept work, which we're working to finalize right now. And we have 5.6 million included in next year's capital budget for the construction phase. And Lauren, if you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, and that's really the scope of the project. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions for Jonathan or Josh? Go ahead, Commissioner Purdy.
Thank you. Thanks for this. I don't know if this is the appropriate place to ask this question, but traffic control, is it considered possible to do this at night, to do nighttime work for this project?
Yes, to answer your question, that is one of the things that we talk with on a fairly frequent basis with Department of Transportation as to what the requirements are, how many lanes have to remain open. And one of the things that we're finding with based on the location of where we're working, it's probably lending itself that this work is going to have to be done at night just due to traffic volumes. They may have to, for example, relocate traffic onto the other side of the road and have a single lane in order to give them room to do the work. So that's one of the things that we're continuing to work with DPW to figure out what their requirements are, but it definitely has the look, and it's heading in the direction where it's likely going to be night work is going to be one of the only feasible ways of making it happen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Cuddle?
That was my question too, and it's something that residents are asking often now is like, can a lot of this construction work be done at night? Just because, traffic volumes and congestion are so high at the moment. So you answered my question. Thank you.
No problem.
Seeing no further questions, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you, Josh and Jonathan. Item 5.2, Sullivan's Pond Storm Sewer Replacement Phase 2, Part 2. I have a motion to be put on the floor.
I can do that, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Move that the Halifax Water Board approve funding in the amount of 19,309,000, including net HST for the Sullivan's Pond Storm Sewer Replacement Phase 2, Part 2, Sawmill Creek Project.
Second.
Commissioner Purdy will second. Thank you for that. Back to you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. Up next, we've got, Andrew Snow here. He's Manager of Infrastructure Engineering on our capital team. He's going to provide a verbal update on this part 2 of a current project we have ongoing at the moment over in Dartmouth. This is the next portion of the project. So part 1 has already gone through the approvals and is in construction. And phase 2, part 2 is what Andrew is going to talk about today.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So as Josh mentioned, I'm the project manager for this one. This is a project that's a continuation of the ongoing storm sewer upgrade that is being constructed this year, which is labeled as part 1 in the report. The end of part 1 will complete the open channel and box culvert section from Dartmouth Cove to the north side of Dundas Street. Construction of part 1 is estimated to be completed in August of 2025. The completion of part 1 will include new extension of Dundas Street to Canal Street, and this will allow for proper detour of traffic at the Portland Street, Alderney Drive, and Prince Albert Road intersection during construction of Part 2. Part 2 of this project will continue installation of box culverts and open channel systems. The engineered channel will match the work completed in Phase 1 at the mouth of the Solvins Pond project. Along with the new stormwater infrastructure, Halifax Water is replacing a PRV chamber and upsizing a portion of water main to align with future growth in the area. Halifax Water will also be separating a portion of sanitary sewer from Star Lane to Canal Street. Similar to the first phase, the second phase will also be integrated with HRM as they are completing street work, road realignment, installing new multi-use pathways, and upgrading landscaping in the Martins Park area. Halifax Water is aiming to tender Part 2 in January of 2025 with an expected construction start date of August 2025. The project's estimated completion date is fall of 2026. And the total project cost for this is 19.4 million, of which roughly 40% is being funded by the provincial government through the Municipal Capital Growth Program. So yeah, that's the quick overview of the project. As most of you probably have seen, there's a lot of construction activity going on along Alderney Drive there as they get, Part 1 completed, which is a large hole in the ground there right now. But this will just continue that box culvert system through the Papa intersection and into Star Park. So at that, I'll leave it open for questions if anybody has some questions regarding the project.
Thank you, Andrew. That was very helpful. Any questions for Andrew or Josh? Okay, we'll vote on the motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks.
Item 5.3, Main Street Pumping Station, Gulfview Drive Project, additional funding request. I have a motion. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner McClellan.
Thank you. I move that the Halifax Water Board approve additional funding of $550,000 for the Main Street Pump Station Gulfview Drive project for a revised total project cost of $1,820,000, including net HST.
Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Vice Chair Diego Gammon has seconded. Over to you, Josh.
Great, thank you. Excuse me. I'm going to introduce Aaron Boudreau. He's one of our project engineers that has been working on this project recently. He's going to walk through a verbal update. I think one of the things to highlight with this one is the project would have been previously included in a capital budget. As it was under the $5 million threshold, it wouldn't have had to come to the Halifax Water Board. It would have been approved through the annual capital budget. However, working through the project and we sought UARB approvals for a dollar value, we then tendered, and as a result, there was an increase in the cost. And as a result of our capital approval funding policy, we are now back in front to request approval of that increase as it triggered the $250,000 increase requirement. So that's why it's in front of the Halifax Water Board today, prior to us seeking the additional funding from the UARB. So with that, I'll lay it up to Aaron just to give a kind of a background on how we got to here today.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Morning, everyone. So yeah, Josh covered, I guess, the reason that this is being brought up to the board. So I'll give a bit of a background on the project. This project is a asset renewal project for the Gulfview pump station. It's near the intersection of Main Street and Forest Hills Parkway in Dartmouth. We are looking to replace some piping and buried valves with a valve chamber at this area because the existing assets are failing, and we're trying to improve that to a better long-term solution here. So we prepared the design for the valve chamber and additional work to be done there. We brought this to tender and had 3 bids come in. The bids were above the budget that we had, but we did feel that we did get a competitive bidding process. So after reviewing those numbers and the work that needs to be done, we felt that it was appropriate to proceed with the lowest acceptable bid, and that's where the total revised project cost estimate comes from. So as mentioned, we're seeking $550,000 additional dollars for this project to continue it into construction. Any questions? Let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. And can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sorry. So I'm Aaron Boudreau. I'm a project engineer for the Capital Delivery Group under Municipal Engineering.
Thank you, Aaron. Great job. Any questions for Aaron or Josh on the Main Street Pumping Station, Gulfview Drive? No? Okay, motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you, Josh and Aaron.
Thank you.
No problem. Madam Chair, if I could add one clarification.
Go ahead.
It was in relation to Commissioner McPherson's question earlier in the meeting around the DES amount of unspent funds. So I reached out to the team to confirm it's actually funding for an extension up the Cogswell Street. So it is a piping extension, and we are going through we require a provincial amendment to the act in order to spend those funds. So at this point in time, there was a report that actually went to this board in September for moving that forward. And since then, the municipality has sent a letter of support to the province for that extension. So we're going through that process at which time we'll then be able to pay that cost of that extension back to HRM up Cogswell Street.
Thanks for that, Josh. So I guess we're really into the spring now, the spring session of the legislature, if it gets on the agenda.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that follow-up, Josh. Okay, moving on to other business. First of all, I was remiss not to introduce our new commissioner. We would like to welcome Commissioner Trish Purdy, who is a member of the board on behalf of HRM. She is the counselor for District 4. We are very happy to welcome you to the commission, Commissioner Purdy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to be here and looking forward to learning all the insider stuff there is to learn.
Welcome aboard, and sorry, I should have done it at the start as well. So due to the recent municipal election, as well as ongoing good governance, we do have term limits on our all of our board members. And so we've had a few commissioners reach the end of the term, and one counselor that was not reelected. So this is why you're seeing Commissioner Purdy as a new appointment to the board. As well, we are pleased to welcome back Vice Chair Diego Gammon and Commissioner Cuddle as HRM representatives. Thank you both. And we would like to thank Commissioner Kent and Commissioner Russell for their service to the board. They served us faithfully and with dedication, so we'd like to thank them for their service. Okay, as part of that change in membership on the board, we do have appointments to the board subcommittees. And so I see that Lorna has provided a motion to be put on the floor. If somebody could make that motion.
I can do that, Madam Chair. I would move that the Halifax Water Board approve the appointment of Commissioner Trish Purdy to the Environment, Health and Safety Committee.
Seconder. Commissioner McClellan has seconded. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Welcome to the Environment, Health and Safety Subcommittee, Commissioner Purdy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Item 7, I have a verbal update. I assume this is over to you, Kenda.
Correct. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know I've met Commissioner Purdy, but just for the record, Kenda McKenzie, Acting General Manager and CEO for Halifax Water.
Thank
So
you,
we
Kenda.
wanted, thank you. We wanted to take a moment just to give the board an update on the water issue shortage at the Lake Major lake facility. Due to the reduced or lack of precipitation that we've seen across the province this past spring or past fall into going into the winter, the lake has not been able to get the recharge that it needs. In addition, the way that the pump is configured at that water supply, it's higher up in the lake, and so it's not able to draw down and reach the lower levels of the lake. So there's still a volume of water in the lake. The predominant factor is due to where the intake is. And so as we've been communicating to the public and to you with updates, we're looking to an engineered solution to address that temporarily. And that would involve damming up portions of the lake and installing a temporary pump and intake to reach those lower levels of the lake. This is part of our long-term plan to do a permanent retrofit at the pump intake for the raw water. And it's part of our overall water supply enhancement project that we've been speaking to over the past few years. This is not an unnormal situation to have some lower water levels, and due to the configuration of the pump, had to have water conservation measures put in place back in 2016 and 2018. And the graphic that Lorna is showing is kind of highlighting some of the trigger points and levels that we are monitoring, and when we start to formulate the communications that are going out to the public and what triggers those. And based on, we had a discussion at our EH&S workshop yesterday, and are proposing to put a graphic similar to this on the website as well, so that it informs the residents on how we're doing and where we're at in the status of the lake and the water levels. As you can see from the graphic, the green is the normal water level based on the height of the dam. And then as you get into lower levels, as we get just below 19 meters, the yellow line, that's when we start to monitor a bit more closely and start to make plans that if the trend continues, that we would start to launch into our contingency planning for a water shortage situation. And then in and around when we get to that warning level, that triggers the PSA that we sent out relating to voluntary restrictions. So that was the initial message that went out to the community to ask them to conserve where they could. And then as we're working through that, we can continue to monitor and have specific points where we would enact and put that temporary pump in place. So staff right now are going through the process of securing all of the equipment and the permits and approvals that are required from the regulators. So that's Nova Scotia Environment, Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And so all of those activities are going on behind the scenes. We did stand up what we refer to as our incident command system structure, where we have a dedicated team that is focused on delivering these discrete actions and making sure that we're responding and having things in place. One of the things that we want to highlight, there was the messaging that went out this week, and its intention was twofold. We wanted to, as you can see, the blue bar graph, the rain that we received last weekend, although it was 70 millimeters of rain, it did increase the water levels that were in the lake. However, it didn't give us the volume that we still need to get us out of those watch and warning phases. And you can see the light blue line as the water in the lake started to rise. There was the instantaneous after the first day or so, but then even we saw some gains yesterday from the upper reaches of the watershed, ultimately draining into the lake. Within our permits for withdrawal from the lake, we have requirements of providing downstream maintenance flow to fish habitat. And it's all part of being good stewards to the environment and making sure that what we do in taking water from this lake and this resource, that it ultimately doesn't have an impact on the habitats and environments around us. Due to some of these concerns and volume of water, we are seeking approvals for reducing some of that flow to the fish habitat within safe limits. So we are consulting with the regulators again to see if we can make any adjustments. And part of the messaging that you saw this week, you'll notice that some of the outdoor, non-essential uses of the water, we elevated that from a voluntary to a mandatory restriction. And again, it's to demonstrate that we're doing everything in our power to try and reduce the draw from the lake and the impact to that body of water. So we're going to continue. As I said, we monitor regularly. We have rain coming this evening, and we'll see how that goes. We're proposing to make this graphic available on our website with weekly updates of the significant changes, and continue to work with the regulators on the temporary work that we want to do with the pump configuration, as well as expediting the permanent pumping configuration through our water supply enhancement project. And we'll continue to make sure the community is well aware of the gains that we're making. We did notice a decrease in water consumption, and so we're very grateful to the customers for all the efforts that they've made in trying to reduce their use of the water supply. And I'm just going to turn that over. It's just meant to be an update, so if there's any questions, glad to take them.
Thank you, Kenda. That was a very helpful update to the board and to the public. Any questions for Kenda on Lake Major? Go ahead, Commissioner O'Toole.
Thank you. So I've been looking at the number of additional units that are being approved through provincial special planning areas that would ultimately be connected to the Lake Major water treatment plant. And I'm curious if Halifax Water is able to do sensitivity analysis, for instance, looking at that chart and where you are right now, you know, how close you are between the warning level versus the emergency level. Could you do sensitivity analysis with assumptions around, okay, if we had 30,000 additional units connected to the Lake Major system today, this is what it would mean. And so we can begin to see what the impact of all of that additional new development is going to have.
And thank you, Commissioner O'Toole. That is a good question, and we are receiving similar type questions and seeing some of those comments about the anticipated growth and the ultimate ability to respond to that in some of the social media posts and from customers. It's a two-part response. As I indicated, right now, the current pumping configuration is going to be adjusted in the next 4 to 5 years as we deliver that upgrade to the raw water pump. Also the treatment plant is going to be upgraded as part of the 5 to 7 year program related to that. In addition to this work, we can do a near term, how much growth do we expect to see and what the draw is in the next 4 to 5 years as we look to upgrading the raw water intake, and what that impact might look like on a graphic similar to what we just shared. And then the mid to longer range piece is going to be, what is the longer term growth going to be for that water supply area, and in relation to the ability of the new pump and what it can draw off the lake, in addition to the ability and the efficiencies that will be gained from the treatment plant process and being able to address greater growth. That's all tied to this shorter, as I say, the shorter, nearer term water supply enhancement project. On a larger scale, we are awaiting approval from Nova Scotia Utility Review Board to award our 30-year integrated resource plan update. So we're in the process of looking at the broader focus of the ultimate growth for that water supply area, and working with HRM staff at the regional planning level to see what the growth it was anticipated through the regional plan, in addition to the ultimate desire from the province to see increased growth to the 1 million and 2 million targets over the period of time. And so we are looking at it from that broader perspective as well. So it's a bit of an iterative but doable exercise. It might take a little bit of time, but we can certainly forecast short and medium and longer term.
Okay, yeah, okay, Commissioner Purdy.
Thank you very much. And I was going to ask that question about developments too, and the concerns that are flooding in from folks. And on that point, is there a lookout for another source of fresh water to expand potentially our water supply for development?
Right.
And also on the PSA that was sent out most recently in the prohibitions, how is that monitored, or is it monitored? Is it just based on people's honor, or are there penalties involved of people not complying with that? And at what point, like, would there ever be a point where Halifax Water shuts the water down and only allows it at certain times? Like, would that even ever come into play, do you think, if there's ever that much of an emergency with the shortage of water?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Purdy. So to the first question about alternate water supplies. So part of this new update to our integrated resource plan, we are looking at our overall water supply capabilities at a higher level, looking at the ultimate growth that is anticipated across the municipality. And so that review would be looking at what's available from a water supply perspective at Pockwalk, Lake Major, Bennery, and all our other sources of water. And then looking at that longer range, I want to say almost post 30-year growth. Do we need another water supply? And what does that look like? And so that is going to be something that you'll be hearing about as that project progresses. It's going to be an exercise that right now we're hopeful that if we get approvals, be able to deliver the IRP in and around a 2-year time frame. And so we'll know more then, but that is one of the things that we are looking at. And then going to the mandatory level of the restrictions, we are able to monitor water use through our AMI data. And if we see any significant spikes that are concerning, we can go and assess there would be a bit of an education with that customer. It would be difficult to, if we find them washing their car, that type of thing, you'd have to be there at the time, but we are able to monitor the usage and go and do some triage to see what might be triggering that higher use. Sometimes we do get calls. People will call and say, I saw my neighbor doing this. And so we are mindful of that. And then as if we don't get the water and we've exhausted all of our efforts, it's going to be that progression of the contingency planning and looking at if there's a heightened or a greater water restriction requirement, more to the inside internal uses. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the restrictions that are in the Queens County area, but they've asked people, I think, to reduce their water use within their home by 50%. And so it would be escalating that internal use and progressing through that. So we are taking this as a staged phased approach and staying close with our regulator. And I did forget to mention that we're also in tune with HRM's emergency management team as well, and keeping them up to date on the status of everything, because we want to make sure that the municipality is well informed of what's happening in that community.
Commissioner Cuddle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, along the lines of Commissioner O'Toole, kind of future looking and looking at the impact. I'm wondering if you can comment a little bit about the watershed management. One of the things you mentioned in your presentation that the lake is being replenished from watersheds further upstream. I know the Pockwalk watershed is well protected. I'm not as familiar with the Lake Major watershed, and I'm just wondering, as new development comes online through stormwater systems, will the ability for the lake to be replenished be compromised? And is those upstream watersheds that we rely on to replenish the lake, are they protected?
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Cuddle. That, again, another good question. Similar to Pockwalk, we have ownership predominantly around the Lake Major system. And so the watershed, we do have watershed protection legislation provincially. Also, HRM has protected water zoning around that lake on the areas that we don't own the land to protect that. And so there's extensive work that's done by our watershed management team. They're small but mighty to make sure that the watershed is protected. And so we do stay in tune with that. And there is information on our website about the boundaries of the watersheds. And so we work closely with the province, our own resources, and HRM on making sure that all the right things happen within those watersheds to protect them, as if there are adjacent developments on lands that we do not have control over.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Kenda? Thank you for that, Kenda. That brings us to the end of today's agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Everybody.
I think
Well,
Commissioner McPherson had his hand up, so we will give him the motion to adjourn. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance today, and we'll see you at the next board meeting.